At Dot & Company, we believe that all agencies deserve amazing account managers and that all of those account managers deserve to be supported, encouraged, and loved on. That's why we started CAM Community, a membership only for account managers. And inside, you'll gain access to the exact training we use to train our own client facing account managers, but also access to all of our SOPs, processes, and live trainings on a variety of topics. If you're an account manager, this is the place you've been waiting for. Learn more at dotandcompany.co/CAM community.
We knew how to say what we're going to do and do what we said. And the scope is all about that.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to happy clients.
Welcome, Joe, to the Happy Clients Podcast.
I'm happy to be here, Taylor.
Sounds good. I geek out when it comes to finding new tools and to improve processes. So when we connected to kind of get on this podcast, I was super excited to just hear all about this amazing product that you've built. So why don't you fill our listeners in on Smart Pricing Table and how in the world you started this company? Because that's so cool.
Yeah, well, a Smart Pricing Table is online interactive proposal software, I'd say with an emphasis on the scope of work. And lots of details. You can check out our website, but we have, configurable line items. We have lots and lots of options and ways that you can play out an SOW. But the origin was simply me sitting in an office after having done hundreds of proposals or SOWs myself and just feeling super frustrated that it was so hard. And what I found in business, I love this, is whenever you've got ambiguity or you've got something really big, what you do is you break it down into its smaller parts. And that's one of my big life passions, is breaking it down, seeing the individual working pieces. And as you do that, you can begin to optimize. And so Smart Pricing Table is essentially my obsession with breaking down an SOW and making the process super enjoyable.
I love it. So when you said it was really hard, what was hard about the way you were doing SOWs before versus now? What was hard about it?
Yeah, well, and I would say that there's a handful of particular challenges, but one would be the mental fog that comes from it. A lot of times agency owners or salespeople in the agency space, you've got so much going on. There's fire drills that come up. You want to put your customers first. There's always a balance. It just feels like when I get in front of the white screen on Word or whatever, there's just all this fog, all this ambiguity. And so I've got to really get focused time, and I need to think through it because the stakes are high, right? If I don't scope this out properly, it could literally become a nightmare for my agency. There's the ambiguity, and then there's just the time. It takes so much time if you're not building a system with this type of thing.
Totally. And so let's talk a little bit about the nightmares, because that is totally our jam. We like to come into the nightmares and help fix them. But how does Smart Pricing Table allow agencies to avoid those nightmares? Maybe like during the onboarding process, where does Smart Pricing Table come into the mix, and how does it keep things flowing?
Yeah, I think I'm going to focus on the idea of scope creep. Okay. Again, there's just a lot of pain points in this particular category, but scope creep is one of the biggest challenges. And scope creep comes from vague, comes from not being clear about what's expected on both sides, not clear on the deliverables. And so the concept of Smart Pricing Table and how it really helps it is you're building a system of reusable modules that are super powerful. Okay, so getting back to that breaking things down idea, instead of every time I'm doing a proposal, I'm kind of starting from scratch, I'm having to think through the same thing over and over, I want to break those down. Okay, so for instance, at my old agency, we were a high-end WordPress digital agency. Something that we sold a lot was like a blog, okay? But as you can imagine, Taylor, a blog could be a $1,000 endeavor. It could be a $100,000 endeavor, right?
Oof.
So what we would do is we would take things like that, or an about us page, or a contact us page, and we'd spell it out. And what I typically would do is I'd have like a summary sentence inside this line item that I'm creating. Create a blog for the customer, includes these features. I list them out. I then follow it by with any limitations. And then I might, in our software, I'd have some configurations. But so getting back to the question, I need to have enough clarity so that I can have handles to grab onto. If you don't have handles, you can't stop scope creep. And the way that you get handles is you start working on your business. You start creating these reusable modules that are reflective of your services so that when you're executing, when you're creating an SOW or a proposal, you can do it quickly, knowing that you've previously thought through it a lot. Does that make sense? Yeah, big idea there.
Yep. So where does this come in? So let's say an agency owner is on a sales call and the client wants this, let's say, WordPress site. Do you build it like right on the sales call? How do you recommend agencies use this tool?
Yeah, I think that for certain types of services, you potentially could have something going behind the scenes on a sales call. I'd say that's relatively tricky if you're dealing with projects north of $10,000, $20,000. Typically what we did, and actually this might be kind of a fun tip from the sales perspective, but what I would do is a proposal review meeting. And so the flow would go, I'd have a sales discovery for about 30 minutes or so. And I'd say, well, Taylor, thank you so much for downloading all that information. The next step in our process is I'd like to book a proposal review meeting. Now, when I say proposals, we did proposals and SOWs. It was all together. It was a proposal that had a scope of work inside of it. I would then bring up my Calendly and I'd book the meeting right there with you using the acronym FAMBAM. Okay? From a meeting, book a meeting. Okay. Easiest time to get a meeting is on a meeting. 95% of the time they just go with it because it sounded so concrete, like this is part of our process. The 5% that push back, you have to ask, is this really worth my time? Right? If you can't meet with me for an additional 20 minutes, do we really have a lot of synergy going on here? And then I would do the proposal review meeting or the scope of work review meeting. And the idea is I don't want to just throw something over the fence. I want to be able to sell it. Don't do all this hard work, scoping out a project, putting together pricing, and then just chuck it over the fence with no ability to explain it. So you go to the Zoom meeting with them, go over everything, answer questions, and you send them the link afterwards. Not before, because you don't want to rob their incentive to come, and not during, because you don't want them looking at their screen. You want them focused on you. So you send it afterwards. So that'd be my general flow for get the requirements, build it quickly with the modules that you've been establishing, and then review it on a review meeting.
I love that process. Yeah, I like how you included just this is our process, this is the next step. And you said 90% usually would go to that call?
Very, very high.
Nice.
Virtually everyone. So
that's awesome. So talk to me about the modules. What is included? What would you put inside of a module?
Well, Taylor, I'd love to give you a quick flyby of the product. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you, start with a sample proposal from the view of your prospect. As we talked about, our software is online interactive proposal software that focuses on the scope of work. We can kind of flesh out some of the concepts we talked about here. So I'll start with what does it look like from your prospect's view, so you can get a sense of what their experience would be. And then I can show you the back end and the administrative side. So looking at this, I've got a sample proposal here. This is for a website project. We do, for instance, I have an IT one here. We do a lot of marketing, internet marketing kind of stuff as well. But you can put whatever you'd like in here. I can have biographical information, video, payment, terms, case studies, executive summary, et cetera, et cetera. But what really makes us different is the scope of work table. This is where we're really distinct in the market. And so let me go over a handful of features. Also, by the way, interject with questions. Happy to go down rabbit trails. So the first thing is prices are hooked to the top and they're dynamic. So as your prospect makes selections, they have a running total. Line items open and close so that you can get into detail without overwhelming your prospect. Oftentimes the detail that's needed to avoid scope creep. Okay. That's how you defend against scope creep, is clarity. We also support quantities and optional items. And of course, you determine what and how much is optional. So maybe nothing is optional, or even everything is optional, totally up to the agency. And then one of our most unique features, and we talked about this on the podcast, but is the ability to configure on the line item level. So you can see I have a baseline item here. This is actually pretty much exactly what we talked about. And the prospect can make selections depending on their budgets and their desire. 3 things I like to point out about these configurations can really cut down on back and forth. Customers oftentimes don't know what they want, and so just give them some options and it'll save you a bunch of time. Customers also find this really refreshing. Most prospects are used to getting a static document that they can't change. And so all of a sudden, when they have a degree of agency, it's like, wow, this is really cool. And then finally, FOMO, or fear of missing out, can kick in. So I've got, you can see these prices are a bit lower than the rest of them. And the boxes are just so darn easy to check that lo and behold, it happens pretty often in our system. When your customer upsells themselves, there's a lot more ownership. Right? They're not being sold to, they're selecting.
I also like that having it all laid out like this shows that it's almost like there's no deals for people. They can't try and like nickel and dime you. It's like, this is the price.
Right.
I like that.
I often would have people ask for a discount or something like that. And I'd say, I'm happy to go down on price, but if we go down on price, we're going to have to go down on scope. Right. And what happens with our system, though, is that you don't even have to have that hard conversation many times, because the customer will just deselect stuff themselves. Maybe they've got a 15K max, and so they just deselect. Now they have all the authority to sign the agreement. And because yours was ready first and they like it, they just go forward. Just forget all the other ones. Right.
Cool.
We also support cost TBD, inline discounts and credits, included or free, recurring line items, and that's monthly, annually, quarterly, weekly, biweekly, just tons and tons of options. And again, that's where we go really deep in ways that other proposal software wouldn't. And then here's even an example of a hybrid where you've got a recurring fee and a one-time all in the same line item. The entire thing is optional. And so you can see as I select this, it's updating 2 totals. And I even have a video in here. So let's say you've got a subject matter that could use some explanation. There's a video right here. Is SEO. And they can play it right from the line item. Imagine having maybe there's a service that has a lot of complexity and you get a lot of questions, and you could have like a Loom video that plays right inside the line item to overcome objections, and even doing a little bit of selling for you.
Cool. I like that.
So super versatile. And then I always like, this is one of my favorite sections, additional items for consideration. And these 3 are some fun ideas. So the first one is pre-purchase monthly hours. Why not always pitch these? Why not have this on every single proposal? The idea is maybe you give them a 20% discount and a priority order in your queue, but you require a 6-month commitment, and you're building additional recurring revenue. Give them the option. Maybe they look at this and they're like, oh my goodness, I really want to make sure that they're there when we need them. And they, upsell themselves. Here's an example of an optional rush fee. Many times we go faster for customers just because they ask, not realizing that they would have paid. Right? So they can opt into this, or they can deselect it, get a dopamine rush from a nice price break, and you get a realistic timeline. Okay. Most of the time, the agency is going super fast and they're not getting compensated. This makes it so that you win either way. And then here's an example of a 12-month installment plan. Again, just another use case on our platform that's kind of unique to us. Maybe you're allowing them to pay over 12 months. It could be like a price conscientious customer, or they just, you can get more budget. Maybe they're willing to do 50 instead of 20 because they can pay over 12 months. And these numbers actually update dynamically. So if you want to go faster, that's just an extra like $150 a month, right? With this installment plan. And then finally, you can also do single selects, and you can do an entire group as optional. So let's say you have a phase 1, phase 2 project, and phase 2 is tentative, you can make the whole thing optional. this is why we're different from a lot of the products on the market. No one goes this deep with an eye on the scope of work.
It's very obvious after looking at this how specific it is for agencies. Like every single thing that you've showed is relevant for an agency. So well done.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that a lot on our demos. Just kind of this surprise of like, I can't believe how relevant this is. And it's because, it's so powerful to know your market. Okay, let me jump on the back end really quick, and I'll give you a brief demo of administration. This is where there can be a lot of light bulb moments. So I've got the same proposal open in admin mode. I can edit content easily. I could add a page from the library, like some case studies or an executive summary template, or I could start with a blank page. And then the scope of work is built for uber efficiency. So one of the core concepts that we discovered as an agency about halfway in was the idea of productizing your offering. We talked about this offline. And a lot of service-based companies, they don't think about this because they think of it just like it's all custom, really. If you can productize or create reusable modules that you can pull in, it goes so much faster than having to start from scratch all the time or look through an old proposal. So for instance, let's say I wanted to add that blog line item. I just search, add, done.
Nice.
All the previous forethought, limitations, configurations are all right there. But because every customer is different, I can now customize this. Maybe I change the price, add an additional parameter. I can even pre-select some of the configurations based on the sales call. But again, the point is I'm not starting from scratch. And imagine as the system matures, having just a really robust library where you can add stuff quickly, and all of a sudden, this is a completely different game. Like you actually enjoy the process. You can also add a blank line item for something not in your library. And I can save line items to the library quickly so that with each new project or SOW, I'm building momentum. Our line item editor is super powerful. We support font sizes, colors, highlights, but also links, images, videos, as you saw, tables, get really into the details if needed, dynamic content like pricing information or your customer's name. Powerful settings on the right. You can see all these frequencies and fee types. And then configurations go right here. And I always like to point out, if I do a negative on the pricing table, it actually becomes a credit.
Cool.
So in this case, it's an optional credit. Maybe imagine they're agreeing to link back to your website or something like that. That's a great use case for this. Couple more quick notes on individual proposals. We're getting close here. I can add a discount easily. Shows math on the bottom. But I can also do the opposite. And I mentioned this on the podcast, Taylor. I can inflate the price by a certain percentage. So right here, let's say I've got a high-risk project or heaven forbid, a high maintenance customer. Okay.
We don't have those around here, do we?
Those don't exist. Yeah. I heard a company had one of those once. I'm going to put 30%, and you'll see I'm going to go from 18.4 to 23.9, just like that.
Nice.
All behind the scenes and equally distributed across the entire proposal so that no matter what they select, you're getting your premium rate. And as I mentioned in the podcast, like this is just a nice safety net. Like maybe you're feeling uneasy. This kind seems complicated. Add 10%. You can always add a discount on top of a surcharge, but it's a very nice safety net.
That's so cool.
From a design perspective, you can control colors, backgrounds, fonts, and the logo to match your brand. We have a preview built in, including a mobile toggle.
Ooh, I like that.
So it works great on phones. And then Taylor, people tend to get pretty fired up about our analytics. How it works is we'll send you email notification when they open the proposal, but we also track the pages they click on, and we take it a step further. We track their interactions with your scope of work. They open a line item, check a box, change a quantity. We log all of it so that you can have the most informed sales follow-up. An example I like to mention is, imagine, you're looking through this log of their interactions and you see they turn something off and on a few times. And so you casually bring it up on your next sales call. I always say in a non-creepy way, just surface the thing. Hey, are you guys interested in this thing? Find the objection you may be able to overcome it and get the money back on the table. But at minimum, we spend so much time on these documents and have no stinking clue what they're doing, right? So this is a lot of positive synergy that kind of helps you strategize. So library, your line items go here when you save them to the library, and you can categorize things. There's also a templating system, and templates are comprised of pages on the left and line items on the right. So much like a proposal, but think of a template as a launch pad where maybe you have 95% of everything you need. And then you create a proposal based on it and just adjust, delete, and add. It's really just kind of more of a, adjusting the clay instead of, having to really start from scratch. For example, here's a logo design one that could work in a lot of different cases. And I've previously thought through the kind of upsells they might want, like a WebP version. Okay, and then the last major thing, I'll create a proposal. So I'm just going to choose a template here, fill out a quick form. We do integrate with HubSpot and Pipedrive, so you could pull in record information from there if it was connected. And you'll note, Taylor, that our app goes blazing fast. I already created the proposal based on the template, but it's its own unique copy, and you can customize this as much as you want. It does pull in your role and your contact info, so ready to go for multiple salespeople out of the box. And then the beauty is just now being able to go through this and tweak it as needed for my customer. I've already done the work in my template to think through so many things in advance so that this process can go smooth. But maybe I add a page or adjust a term. And on the scope of work, I just go top down and ask a handful of questions. Like, is this line item needed? Is the price appropriate? Are the parameters correct? Is there anything I want to adjust? And so maybe on this one, I add a note to make sure they know I was paying attention. I could make this one optional, but selected. Of course, I can delete things and add things. And when I'm adding, I'm always thinking of the future. I'm always thinking of reuse so that I can save this to the library. And next time I sell that, I don't have to think through it. I already did, right? And I can also move things. Maybe they're on the fence on this one. And so I move it down to additional items for consideration. This section, I cannot emphasize enough how much gold, how much of a money maker this section is. Enticing descriptions that are valuable to your prospect where they can upsell themselves. Maybe you have a lot of these deselected, but they start looking through these and they're like, yeah, let's do this one. Finally, I can send the proposal either with an email or a link. I'm going to mark this as sent manually. And while it's sent, it's under review. Your prospect is looking at it. They can make selections, and it's completely open. This is a nice benefit of our system. You can fix spelling errors. You can add line items. It's completely open. It's not, you can even jump on Zoom and answer questions, make selections, and get real-time price updates right in front of your customer. I mean, that's just so not normal that it's such a great experience to be able to get those price updates that typically take 2 or 3 days, standard process. As soon as they press sign or you press sign, it wraps it up in a signable PDF and goes out for signatures in a DocuSign-like fashion, and you're off to the races. So that's the full rundown.
So cool. I feel like this is an SOP on steroids.
Yeah.
Right? It's like taking your learnings every single time you do something and feedback, and saving. Like, it just feels like so easy. It's funny, as you were going through this, it reminded me of this experience about a year ago. We were working on getting a quote from an agency. We met for the sales call. He's like, okay, I'm going to send you like the quote or whatever in a few days. It was a week later that they sent me this detailed SOW with a price.
Right.
And I'm thinking in my head, wow, wouldn't it have been cool if we could have done a 15-minute chat like the next day to run through this, or even on the initial sales call, so that it was just done? I don't know.
Right.
This makes so much sense. So I love it. I love it.
You can definitely build things so much more rapid. I remember as an agency, as an owner, I would have like an employee issue or something come up, and you're working on a proposal, and all of a sudden you got to ramp out, fix the issue, get your mind in a completely different space, and you got to ramp back in. And if you're doing everything manually, that's really hard. But if you can piece things together quickly because you've got these, the productization done, you can do that. And it's totally fine. And you can still get things out quickly, which is so important for sales.
Totally. And just reiterating your earlier point that even if you feel like your business or your agency can't be productized, this is still a productized offer, even though it's highly customized.
Yeah. And when I talk to agencies that say like everything we do is custom, the thing about it is you probably haven't thought about it enough. There are probably a lot of things that you do over and over. Maybe they're quite a bit different, but could you have an abstract line item that has a bunch of information in it, and then maybe you still have to customize it 30, 40%, but it's a structured way to go about it. And I'd also say if you don't have any patterns in your business, that's rough.
Yeah, true.
So as an example, I'll go back to a blog module, and we've got like a web design. We also have like marketing proposals, samples on our website, but let's say it's a blog. So I'd say, this is an individual line item in a scope of work table. And I'd say something like develop blog for customer, features include, and then I do a bulleted list. I like a bulleted list because it's easy for me to break down. In fact, you enjoy the process, but it's also easy for your customer to digest. It's not just a wall of text. And so then I would say things like what's included would be like the main loop for the blog, an individual blog page, maybe a category page, author page, or whatever, like something like that. I often would say add after that bulleted list, there's a development max of 10 hours. So it's a fixed cost, but I still put that on there. So it's kind of best of both worlds between hourly and fixed. But limitations are what save your butt in the project. If you don't have limitations, you're asking for challenges, right? And then here's the magic of our software, Taylor. I can then add configurations to that blog. Things like, let's say author bio pages wasn't included in the default. Would you like author bio pages? That's $950. Maybe the original blog is $2,500. Would you like social sharing? That's $250. Would you like related blog posts? That's an additional $250 because those are maybe plugins and easy to install. And what this does is it builds a lot of trust with the prospect because you're letting them have some agency. And what we found is that typically a setup like this, you're going to get way more upsells than downsells. That's one of the fears with options. But it's incredible when the customer starts to upsell themselves because your budget increases and they have way more buy-in.
I like that. I like how it's like plug and play. I'm picturing it like dropping into like this SOW. That's
Absolutely,
so cool.
yeah.
So let's say, okay, so you do the sales call, you go through this SOW on the second call, they're in, good to go. Do they use Smart Pricing Table to sign the agreement? Where does the software start and stop, I guess, from the whole sales process?
So the centerpiece is the scope of work. Again, on our website, you'll see lots of examples of how you can break things down, but we package it together as a full proposal. So with our software, you can do like a about us page. You can include your terms, have a cover page, an executive summary, whatever content you'd like. And then you send the proposal over, preferably after a proposal review meeting. And then once they're ready, they can initiate signatures or you can. So we do the full signing process. And then you end up with a signed agreement on both sides. And that's where we stop for now. We're adding some additional integrations. Hopefully we'll have QuickBooks soon, a Zapier integration, definitely trying to extend it past that a bit.
So let's say we're working on a project and okay, you signed here. This is the SOW we're going to work on. And then 3 months in, we change the plan. We're adding 10 different services. Does that reflect in the SOW? Do you just create a new one? How does that ongoing relationship work?
Yeah, that's a pretty common question. I've heard it enough to just really have it ready, my answer here. But if you need a new SOW, let's say it's been a week, I generally say nullify the first one and just create a new one. If it's been a few months, the question is size and scope. Like, are you And I'm not giving like contract advice here, but if it's something small, the way we did it, if it's a few $100, I just would get confirmation over email. It's not worth it. Too much time to like have an updated addendum. If it's sizable, then on our tool, I've suggested to some customers having like a change order template where you reference the original agreement and then you just throw whatever line items you need in there. If there's things that you sell often, you can many times just add them from your library and then tweak them really, really quick. I should note that's really key. With our software, you're adding quickly, so reusable modules, and then tweaking as much as you want, okay? So every customer is different. We understand that. And so you can adjust it for your prospect without affecting your system or your source line items and really finesse it to what it needs to be.
Cool. Well, I think this is really cool. Talk to me a little bit about what this means for an account manager. So we're kind of on the other side of the sales process.
Yeah.
Obviously, the scope creep is on our shoulders. The expectations that aren't being met are on our shoulders. What does this mean for us as an account manager?
Yeah, well, it's massive. And this is, I think agencies can miss this. They cannot connect the dots. Your proposal or scope of work is absolutely foundational to your project being successful. It's like one thing to just get the signed contract. It's like, we all know that doesn't necessarily ensure success at all. The scope of work is protection and it's clarity for the account manager, right? You can go back to it throughout the project and make sure that you've kept your word on everything. You can also use it to push back on the customer. Hey, just so you know, we've got about an hour left of time that we can spend on this item. Happy to, keep going, but we need to go hourly at that rate, right? If you don't have something like that, you either have to play the jerk or you have to take it, right? Like we're just gonna keep going because we can't have no handles to grab onto, right? And one of the scenarios I really love, and this is how we did at my agency, is your account manager, at least senior level, like people that are been there longer, should have some say into the line item modules that are in your library. Okay, if they have to execute on them, they should have some say. And so what I like is you've got your salespeople selling or developing the scope of work documents, but you have some kind of architect. Who's the technical person who understands your service offering back and forth? Or let them define the reusable modules and then get buy-in from your team on the service, right? So this is, when we say blog, this is what we mean. When we say, SEO, this is what we mean. Get buy-in from your whole team before your salesperson starts actually selling it. And what it can do, I mean, we didn't have fire drills. I hate to plug my old agency here, but we were on clutch.co, we were one of the top 3 like web design companies, period. And so much of it was that expectation management. We had really highly rated because we knew how to say what we're going to do and do what we said. And the scope is all about that. So
I agree. And I think we often come into situations where the salesperson is just trying to make that sale and promising the world. And then we have to take over that client and do a lot of damage control. But I like how you put it where it's the SOW is kind of like the Bible. It's what we're going to do. It is written in stone, exactly what's going to happen. And I like using that as, yes, you have to be the bad cop sometimes, but having an agreement from the beginning, this is what we're going to do.
right.
I think just makes everything so much more clear rather than like, hey, yeah, we signed on this new client. We're going to do a website for them. Here you go. And it's like the client's expectations versus our team's expectations could be wildly different.
Yeah. Vague, I call it the vague vortex. It destroys your life, can be a living hell for an agency. It's funny, you give the expectations, you get the exact same results, but you can end up with a happy customer. You get rid of you don't manage the expectations, get the exact same result, and you get with an angry customer, right? And so being clear is just so vital.
That's so true. It's so funny. So many agencies will say, it's all about the results. Like if we're just getting results, the clients will be happy. But they don't realize that really it's all in how you manage that relationship, expectations, and that all ties into SOWs and getting that right from the beginning.
Right.
What else should we know about Smart Pricing Table?
Well, it might be helpful for your audience to know that we really have a focus on marketing agencies. And so that, a lot of our features, like, we have the ability, here's a fun feature. You can increase the entire price for an SOW by a certain percentage with one setting. Okay.
That's cool.
I won't use the acronym for why you might do that. There's like some kind of tax, we call customers a certain acronym, but it's a way to say, I'm feeling nervous about making profit on this project, so I want to add 20%. And it will take every single line item, every single upsell or configuration inside the SOW, and it will inflate it by 20%, all behind the scenes. And it's just, again, a safety net to make sure that you're profitable. Those are the kind of features that you get with our software because we know our market. It's marketing agencies, and then I'd say professional services as a bit of a wider net, but we're not trying to serve everyone. There's a lot of proposal scenarios that we don't do well. It's really the professional services space.
Love that. So why should agencies use your tool versus thinking they can build this in a spreadsheet?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just answer the question simply by saying because of my obsession. I've thought about this so much, and my team has thought about it so much, and this is all we do, focusing on how do we make this the most efficient process. And I think one of the nice things, Taylor, we do free demos, and I love personalizing it for prospects. Once you get in there and you see, oh my goodness, we could be upselling in this area, or we could build it this quickly because of the library feature. I think it just makes, once you see it visually, it's just so powerful. If this is piquing an interest, know that that's an option as well.
I love that. Definitely book a demo so you can kind of see how this would work for your agency. And I think a big piece of thinking about all of these steps and adding in tools like Smart Pricing Table, if this increases your conversion rates by like 1%, it's worth it. Like if it's going to save you 10 hours a week, that is so worth any investment in a tool like this. If you think about it that way, if you can get your proposals out faster, more efficient, your clients are part of that process, it's easy, it's seamless, that is going to pay you in millions of dollars if you can just optimize your process, make these small tweaks by adding in tools like this, and just increase your conversion rates. It's a game changer. It's a no-brainer, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So, Joe, how can agencies do a demo? Because I want to do a demo. I want to geek out with you on this tool. How can they learn more?
Yeah, so smartpricingtable.com. You can schedule a demo very easily. Just grab a spot on our Calendly. The demo lasts about 15 minutes. It can be as short as 15 minutes. We always book a little bit of time. So if you're short on time, don't worry. And then after that, we could talk about a potential free trial if it's interesting. 30-day free trial. One thing I like to note, and this is kind of a new service, we actually have kind of a do-it-for-you implementation service these days. So maybe you're like, Joe, this sounds really interesting, but I don't have the time. We can schedule 1-hour implementation calls as needed, where you send over a proposal or an SOW sample, and we'll literally jump on a call with you, no prep work required, and start entering content for you to give you vision for the product. And that's still during the free trial. Because of my agency background, we're a little bit more high touch than a typical SaaS product.
I can tell. Over deliver.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Joe, for coming on the Happy Clients podcast. Anybody listening, it is always worth a demo to see if this could change one piece of your agency sales process or overall agency process, because it could be a total game changer. So definitely check it out. But Joe, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Taylor. It's been great.
Cheers to happy clients.